This is Madness by Deadringer. I had tried Datura 3 or 4 times at low and moderate doses and found it to be heavier in side effects than psychedelic ones. But being bored one Sunday afternoon, I decided to take out the envelopes of seeds I had culled from the Datura plants I'd grown in my garden the previous summer and do a righteous dose. I'm an experienced user of psychedelics and believed I could handle it even with a new roommate in the house. So I pulverized a lot of the seeds with a hammer and put them into a pillbox. I retreated to my bedroom and started sprinkling the ground-up seed mix into water and drinking it. It's hard to tell exactly what my dose was, but after several glasses of water/Datura, the physical effects kicked in. They were very unpleasant, and I was immediately sorry that I had done it. I felt a nausea-like discomfort and the usual savage case of dry mouth. My limbs were difficult to move, and even limited movements felt sickening. About 4 hours after taking the dose, the trip started getting hallucinatory. I was drinking lots of water to offset the dehydration to no avail, and going to the bathroom often. But urinating was difficult and not very effective. The bathroom looked normal, but when I looked down into the toilet, the water was covered with a layer of gelatin with rainbow highlights. Occasionally, I saw small ticks on the wall, and upon closer look, they were spiders. By about 11 p.m., my roommate Jenny was asleep, and I was tripping hard but didn't necessarily realize it. Everything was very dreamlike, and during one of my journeys to the bathroom, I saw Jenny there, sitting on the toilet with the lid closed, looking at me. We stared at each other for a long time, and I looked down momentarily, and when I looked up at her, she wasn't there. Never had been. So began a series of hallucinations. In the house's second bathroom, I saw Jenny standing next to me, looking at me. I turned to her and resolved to muster a reassuring smile, but when I turned, I realized that what I had really been looking at was my own reflection in the mirror. I was very alarmed and thought, this is madness, but my reflection was wearing to the placid smile I'd put on for Jenny, and my calm expression was somewhat reassuring. From that point on, I was very messed up and was moving around, bumping into things, hallucinating, and tormented by mental confusion. I had minimal short-term memory, and at one point noticed that I had left the bathroom sink faucet running full tilt for an unknown length of time. Colors and sounds were amplified. There were times when there were lots of people in the room, having a party. When I tried to talk, they'd stop and listen, realize I was incomprehensible, and then ignore me and continue their conversations. At some point, I saw one of the tick-spider hybrid creatures come on the bathroom wall, and put my finger on it to confirm it wasn't really there. When I lifted my finger, I saw a nail hole underneath, and I pressed my finger on it, and I felt the paint and plaster cracking to confirm that it really was a nail hole. I laughed at mistaking a nail hole for a spider tick and left. The next day, I realized the wall was perfectly smooth, with no holes whatsoever. After a troubled night, I awoke thinking the trip was over and saw that things weren't quite right. My battery charger was unplugged and lying on the other side of my bedroom. A rented DVD was by the bed with a pair of scissors from a kitchen drawer, my toothbrush and toothpaste and my socks neatly arranged on it. I walked into the kitchen and the answering machine was unplugged. I had no memory of doing any of these things. I went to make coffee and the coffee pot had vanished. All of my toiletries were gone. Later, I found my razor in the washing machine. A $300 paycheck had been taken from my clipboard and was in the recycling bin. A tube of my roommate's toothpaste was in the kitchen cupboard, and so on. I thought the trip was over and was glad, but after rigging up some coffee, I noticed the paint was moving on the patio windowsill. This marked the second phase. The physical effects had lessened, and I was capable of talking. I started smoking marijuana and spent the entire day lying on the couch, smoking pot, drinking coffee, looking out my backyard garden, and listening to CDs on headphones. I was having lots of entertaining hallucinations. It was a sunny, windy day, and the plants were blowing around and they looked like witches, trolls, and hobbits. There was a community of strange and absurd characters in one of the rhododendron trees. The music sounded great. I looked at my hand and it had a shiny, waxy appearance, and layers of it dissolved like layers of paint or melting wax, and finally I was looking at the hand of a creature from another world, with a thumb and 2 fat, waxy fingers. All this was very enjoyable, and I was lucid, and even had a short conversation with Jenny, who was really there this time. Later I went for the walk to the park, and all the trees had faces and were smiling at me. The plants seemed to be bending to me, crying out for affection, each one saying, "Me, me," and demanding to be stroked and hugged. I did comply, but didn't go overboard with it. For days afterward, I felt foggy, and a day or so later it occurred to me that Jenny couldn't have possibly slept through all the noise I was making. I'd even stumbled and crashed loudly into the wall near the door of her room, and I thought that maybe I did something I hadn't remembered, and that maybe Jenny actually had been in the bathroom one of those times. All seemed normal, however, but about 2 days ago after the trip, I noticed Jenny was packing her stuff into her car trunk. She packed a bunch of stuff and then left without explaining and didn't come back that night. I was certain that I had done something during the trip, or that she encountered me in that very messed up condition and was frightened. I thought I was lucky she didn't call the police. The day after she left, I emailed her and told her how sorry I was, that I would be very cooperative with whatever she decided to do from here. She responded and basically said that everything was cool and she didn't know what I was talking about. She said she was only visiting a friend and didn't tell me because she was in a hurry and would be back the next day. So it goes with powerful psychedelics like Datura, which temporarily obliterates thinking processes and memory. Although the second 12 hours or so of my trip was very satisfying, the first half was extremely disorienting, dangerously so. I would also say that I will never try it again, but I wonder. Eating Bugs While My Friends Convulse by Mikey. My first and last Datura experience started with me and two friends sitting around at a house deciding to rip off a Datura plant. After finding one and tearing a few flowers off it, we sat at a mate's house and boiled it all up for half an hour and drank about 3 cups each. Now I am a very experienced drug user, but what happened next I was totally unprepared for. At first, the only feeling I felt was extreme muscle tiredness, and I was almost unable to stand. Neither could my friends. Bang! I'm at my friend's flat chatting to his flatmate. I say I want to go home now. He says, "You are home." I say I want to go home where my mom lives. She says, "I am your mom." Bang! I suddenly realize I am at home. It's almost midday. As my memory comes back, I remember smoking many invisible cigarettes, thinking my mom and brother were friends of mine, talking to invisible people, basically not knowing where, what, how, or why. I later found out I had been crawling on the floor where we originally drank the Datura, eating bugs, while my friend convulsed and foamed at the mouth. When a straight sister called the ambulance, I leapt off the balcony in pursuit of a friend who was actually on the other side of the house. Then my mom was called, by whom I still don't know, and she took me home where I spent hours rolling imaginary joints, snorting imaginary lines, talking to thin air about crap, and basically scaring the shit out of my family. One friend wound up in some bushes with no belt, pants around his knees, listening to music. The other was in the hospital in a morphine-induced coma. He was released the next day. He had been on antidepressants, and that fucked him up. I can tell you it's a very disturbing experience to take a drag on your cigarette and find out what you have done, or to talk to your brother about himself thinking he's someone else, or having your friends come around to see how you are, having a long chat with them only to realize they are not there. I cannot remember. It is all that it was only 3 days ago, and I can't operate properly. It's taken 2 hours so far to write this because I can't see. I do remember trying to smoke my belt, throwing my cat in the bathtub, thinking my mom was Spike Milligan. The list goes on. Suicide Plant by Kilogram. Everything started when me and my girlfriend were in a bar drinking and talking about drugs, and we decided on a drunk head that we should do a psychedelic on that night. So I called a good friend of mine that I knew that I always had something, and we went and took whatever he gave us. He just told us that this is a plant that produces hallucinations. So after a couple hours, me and my girlfriend took 1.5 teaspoons each, and in 30 minutes we were so heavy, so restless, so sleepy, and we took the cab and went home. We really wanted to go to sleep, no talking, no hallucinations so far. So we are in the bed, and every 5 minutes we were going to the toilet, but none of us could do anything, and back to bed where we could not sleep. Then it started. I remember that the first thing I saw was steel bugs coming out of the carpet in the restroom while I was trying to do something. Then I was in the bed and realized that my girlfriend was not in the bed. In the restroom was no light on, and I began seeing dark silhouettes coming from the wall with a lot of big and small bugs. Then all of a sudden I saw a bunch of guys that were looking at me, and in the house every single light was on. I remember that I was in a dark room where I could not see a thing, and I was trying to go somewhere, and I was just hurting myself because I was hitting invisible walls, and had the feeling that everybody else was looking at me. Where I went, I was hitting the walls with my head really hard. I got up in the morning still on Datura. I looked for my coat to go to college, and my girlfriend was, and at the same time was not there. My coat was actually somewhere where I never thought it would be, in the garage. So I thought I was really late for the lessons, and I took a cab because my instinct told me that I could not drive in such condition. I was not seeing anything on my watch and could not read anything. I was trying to smoke, so I was smoking, and then I realized that I had no cigarette in my hand. I was just imitating smoking with my hand. I saw a lot of familiar faces as I was walking on the street saying hi. In reply, they were disappearing, and so on. The most terrifying part is that when I came home from my girlfriend had a black eye full of blood and you almost couldn't see the eye at all. I thought that this was a hallucination too, but was not. Actually, the bumping into the invisible walls at night might have been real. Flailing around without seeing anything, my girlfriend hurt her eye by falling face first into the corner of the TV. I'm surprised she didn't lose her eye. She's okay now, but for a month she couldn't see, and her eye was horrible. It turns out my friend did not know the real effects Datura, since he got it the same night we got it from him, so he never tried it. We told him what happened, and after what almost killed him because of what he gave us and because of my girlfriend. So everybody there that wants to try this plant, go for it, if you really don't care about your life. And if you decide to do it, then do it in a field that has no trees, no nothing that might hurt you, or take small doses that will just make you delirious. This is a devil's plant that I wish I had never tried. There are so many other psychedelics that are more interesting and safe.